The Battle of the Somme, July 1st to November 18th, 1916. One of the bloodiest battles of World War I, with an estimated 1 million casualties. The Battle of the Somme lasted for 4 months and 17 days. It was the longest and costliest campaign of the First World War. The Somme offensive was part of the Allies' plan to launch a joint attack against the Central Powers, with the Russians attacking from the east, the Italians from the south, and the English and French from the west. Armies from Canada, Britain, France, and several colonies of the British Empire attacked the German Empire just north of the Somme River in northern France. The Germans held positions from Amiens to Peronne, and also occupied Bapaume, a strategic location desired by the Allies. The general in charge of the offensive was Sir Douglas Haig, who had little military experience and wasn't very skilled in military operations. He gained his position by favor rather than skill. He was assisted by Sir Henry Rawlinson, general of the Fourth Army, who would be a central figure for the main army of the offensive. He was a seasoned war veteran and developed the bite and hold technique. The army would gain a bit of ground, defend it, then gain a bit and defend it. Haig didn't agree with this strategy. He wanted to just push forward and keep pushing. The third general in charge was Edmund Allenby. He would simultaneously attack in the north to create a diversion, misleading the Germans into sending men to that area so that Haig's beloved cavalry would be useful, and attack in the south behind Rawlinson's Fourth Army. Allenby thought Haig's strategy was largely flawed and would leave his army open to gunfire on 3 sides. The plan was to bombard the Germans for 5 days and nights before attacking. The idea was that this would reduce the artillery to rubble and destroy the barbed wire, making it easy to walk across. They used 2,000 guns spread out over 18 miles. More than 250 shells were fired each day. Compare this to Napoleon's Battle of Waterloo, which used 20,000 for the entire battle. They would also mine tunnels under the trenches and lay 7 huge mines to be detonated before the attack. Even though the British had 2,000 guns, only 200 were heavy guns. The rest shot shrapnel, which was less effective. The munitions production line workers were unexperienced, so nearly 1/3 of the shells were duds. The Germans could very easily see that something big was coming because they were on the ridges and could actually see into the British area. They could prepare. In the area they were fighting in, the 2 sides were separated by 300 yards at most, and had been there for up to 2 years. This had created a kind of inertia, a live and let live policy. Neither side would attack if they weren't attacked. This gave the men in the trenches lots of time. The Germans used this time to line the trenches with concrete, put in electricity, beds, and running water, and create bomb-proof fortresses. The British did not do this because they weren't willing to admit that they would be there for a long time. After they pounded the German area, the patrol told the generals that the 5-day bombardment hadn't worked, that the wire was still there, but the generals ignored this. On July 1st, after 5 days of bombing and shelling the Germans, the armies rose up from their trenches to attack. The generals had decided that because the soldiers were untrained, they would walk across the no-man's land. They figured the Germans were all dead anyways. The armies that were fighting were all new recruits and had little training and no real experience. The infantry had to move uphill to attack, which is a tactical disadvantage because it is difficult to run uphill, easier to be seen, and harder to see the enemy. After the first hour of battle, 30,000 soldiers had been killed. By noon, the toll was at 50,000, and by the end of the day, 67,000 soldiers had been wounded or died. The 1st Newfoundland Regiment had been wiped out at Beaumont Hamel. It took 2 days for General Haig to hear the losses. Until then, he thought it had been a great success. 6 German divisions held off 18 British divisions and lost no territory. There were minor victories. The 7th Division had captured Mametz, and the 18th Division achieved all of their goals. The battle dragged on for the next 4 months. It eventually became a war of attrition, where they waited for the other side to become exhausted or run out of supplies. At the end of August, new Canadian Corps had been brought in. By mid-September, the Allies introduced a new weapon, the tank. These early tanks met with limited success because they couldn't navigate the marshy ground and became easily stuck. The October rains turned the already shattered battlegrounds into a huge muddy lake. By mid-November, the Allies ended the battle because of the weather. This tactical battle of 140 days became the byword for fruitless slaughter. Through incompetent leadership, the Allies were killed by their own generals. If there's any good to be found in this tragic battle, it was that it marked a turning point in World War I. The German losses meant that they wouldn't be able to find enough men for an efficient attack force. The Allies gained 8 miles of ground, but the Germans still held Bapaume. 420,000 British soldiers had died, 200,000 French soldiers died, and 24,713 Canadians and Newfoundlanders lost their lives. Between 450 to 650,000 Germans died during this battle.